commentaries that I looked at in preparation for today said of this gospel that often we preachers off the doesn't straightforwardly that, put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe. So he does not easily let him off because, as Jesus continues, have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe. To appreciate, Thomas was the one who probably was the bravest in making the statement in front of the other apostles after they had seen the Lord, that he wouldn't believe it, just like they had been when they heard the first announcement from the women. Now, granted, in each of the gospel accounts, there's a little difference in what happens with them. You may recall that last week in the gospel according to Mark, that the traditional, or let's say the original ending of the gospel is with the women being terrified and then not saying anything to anybody, because they don't know what to make of it. And eventually they tell the apostles, and they have to check it out, and they still don't know what to make of it until Jesus comes into their midst. And that's what we see in Matthew and in Luke, and also in John. They don't believe initially when they hear what happened. In fact, in a couple of the different gospel accounts, they put the women down and say, "You're hysterical. You don't know what you're talking about. Can't be. You're just imagining things." But yet, eventually they come to that awareness when Jesus comes to them. And so here, once again, Jesus is dealing with one of his obstinate apostles, but one who was always ready to come out and do whatever it was that Jesus wanted him to do, and would come up with the ideas. When he was at the Last Supper and was talking, he says, you know the way that leads where I'm going, and Thomas is the one that says, "Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way?" And then later on, in the gospel, at some point, Thomas blurts out to the other apostles, "Then let's go with him in order to die with him." And so here he's the one that puts into words what they had been feeling and what they had been saying initially. And so when Jesus comes there, they don't know what's going to happen. Thomas and he have the encounter, but we see that Thomas not only jumps to belief, but he makes a profession of faith that none of the other apostles had yet made. And this is the thing that strikes me every time I read this gospel. My Lord and my God. Even after he says that, Jesus says, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." And that's a message for everybody else who would not have seen Jesus, because in the chronology between the resurrection and Jesus' ascension into heaven, depending on which scholars you read and which gospel account you adhere to, happened rather quickly, even though Luke says it took 40 days, but that's in Acts and not in his gospel. That things happened right away. So there wasn't a whole lot of time for other people to see Jesus. There wasn't a whole lot of time for there to be this encounter with this one that they recognized something about, but was so different in the end that they couldn't be sure until they saw the nail prints, until they saw the hole in his side. But a lot of people didn't get that privilege. It was only the few that saw him, and it's because of their conviction and their conversion from doubt to faith that we're here. Because for all of these centuries, those who have not seen have come to believe. And that's you and me and everybody else in the world who is a Christian today or who has ever been, who was not in the original group, who did not see Jesus be raised, nor did they see him ascend into heaven. And most of them weren't there the day of Pentecost either, when the Spirit came down upon them. But yet, we have come to believe. Those of us who are here this morning, and you who are at home, who are, going through this Easter experience once again, all of us who have not seen yet believe, know that we've all had our own journey to get to this point. Because there may have been some point in our life where we had plenty of doubt. Maybe we were, as kids, very active in church, and we believed, and we did everything. We were very involved. It all made sense. And as we got older, or things happened in our personal lives, we may have had large doubts come to us. Or we doubted the love of God, we doubted the existence of God. We doubted whether Jesus is the only God. We may doubt the truths of the faith. There are plenty of people around today who claim to be Christian who do not believe anything that's in the creeds. But somehow they believe in Jesus, but not as divine. And so this is where I like to make the distinction between faith and belief. Because to me, faith means I have believed now. I believe in God, but so does the devil, by the way. I believe in God. I believe in what it says in the creed, even though there are things there that I can't explain. But more than just intellectually assenting to these things, I have come to a point of clinging to this belief. And I have moved from just the intellect into my will and my emotion, and I now say, I have faith. I make that distinction even though they're almost interchangeable. Because as I said, the devil believes in God, but the devil has no faith in God. That act of faith that Thomas expressed was a surrendering after his doubt, after the confrontation, after everything that had gone on. It was his act of surrender. And I think that for us who believe, not just believe, but who say that I have faith in God, we have come to the point of surrendering And certainly that kind of surrender doesn't happen easily, and it doesn't happen all at once. But once we say, I accept, I believe that Christ is who he says he is, I believe what the scriptures say, I believe what, even though I don't fully understand, just like Mary in the Annunciation, where she is approached by the angel, and she does not fully understand how any of this can be. But it's her faith that makes her surrender to saying yes. It was Thomas's faith at that point that led to his profession of faith. It's our surrender to the Lord that makes it possible for us to grow in the relationship that we have, because it's not just intellectual. It's internal. It's spiritual. And it's also emotional. Because there are times when our faith will give us the strength at a time when people are challenging what we say, challenging what we believe, challenging what we cling to. And today, more often than not, Christianity is being questioned by many people who are now more overcome with doubt than perhaps ever before, because of all the flaws and sins and weaknesses that they perceive in us Christians, as well as in the church institutions of which we are a part. If they had faith, they may no longer exercise it. If they had belief, they may have been overwhelmed by their doubts. Doubts that now become an obstacle. Doubts that focus their attention on only the negative and what is most easily disbelieved. But hopefully, through the example of us who have faith, who profess our faith, and who try to live out that faith, that these who have become skeptical or who have turned and walked away, you might have read that, now for the first time in the history since they've been doing these inquiries, less than 50% of Americans belong to any church or profess any faith. It's the first time that our country has gone that low. There are plenty of other countries that are fading fast on the faith frontier, because something has happened and doubt has become stronger and it's overwhelmed them. So today, I would encourage all of us to take some personal time, just a few minutes, after church, at home, when we're by ourselves or whatever, out for a walk, whatever it might be, to just take a few minutes to say a special prayer of thanks to God for having given us the gift of faith, for gracing us in such a way that he trusts us to carry on the mission that Jesus began and entrusted to the apostles, to their successors, and to all who would believe. And also to pray for those that we know have drifted from the faith or who have rejected it out of hand, who are vocal in their opposition to the church, to Christian belief, to pray for them, especially those who were in our company and who have turned away, walked away for whatever reason, that God would heal their hearts, that God would touch their lives, that God would open their eyes and their hearts to see what the truth is, and not to just let their doubts focus their attention on all that we do wrong, and to see what we do right, to see what Thomas saw in the risen Lord that prompted him to say, "My Lord and my God," that they might be able also to profess that faith again. And I would also ask you to consider, and I've done this before, that when you receive Holy Communion today, even though it's not like we've done in the past, but as you receive the individual body and blood of Christ and move to your place to receive, consider professing your faith in the Lord's presence in the bread and the wine by acknowledging him and saying, "My Lord and my God," as you receive. So those are the things I would like to leave with you today. And again, to remember that our faith is something that has to be exercised. Our faith is something that we need to live, but it's also something that we need to share. The grace of the Lord is with us to do that sharing, so that we can, like Thomas, not only profess that faith, but then take it to far places where we find ourselves.